Aloha and welcome to the Maui Online Podcast. My name is Dan O'Brien. In last week's episode, we talked with paddler Kaimana Brummel all about the Pailolo Challenge Outrigger Canoe Race, which just took place this past Saturday. In this week's episode, we shift our focus towards the fascinating history of outrigger canoe paddling, and Kaimana shares why it's so much more than just a sport to the people of Hawaii. And along the way, she talks about the important role the outrigger canoe continues to play, not just in her own family's life, but in the lives of many families across the Hawaiian Islands. It's a fascinating discussion that touches on history, culture, and sport, and you don't want to miss it. So here's Kaimana.
My story really starts here at Kahului Harbor, where I was born and raised, the daughter of a canoe paddler coach. And my mother also was a canoe paddler. So I joke, really, I was that naked kid running on the beach, and so many of the aunties and uncles down here have helped to raise me. My name, Kaimana Malie, means the spirit of the ocean is calm, so I have an innate connection to the ocean. And specifically through canoe paddling, I'm not much of a surfer or windsurfer. It's really been canoe paddling for me since birth, and specifically here in Kahului Harbor. So growing up as a kid, I paddled my entire life as a kid, went away to college, and chose to come back home. And part of the reason why was being connected to the ocean. And I was lucky enough at age 22 to be the executive director of Hawaiian Canoe Club.
Wow, that's an early introduction to executive directing.
I barely knew how to manage my personal finances, and I was in charge of managing the whole club's finances, so I definitely learned on the job. I'm very grateful too that I met my husband here canoe paddling, so it's something that we do together. And now our kids are here, and this was the first season that my son, who is now 8 years old, paddled himself.
Wow. So I can skip the whole question about how you got involved in canoe paddling because it seems like it's kind of a family tradition.
It is. My son is now the 5th generation of my family to race in canoes. Obviously, as a native Hawaiian, we've had a long tradition of canoe paddling, and that's how we got here, was on canoes.
For you growing up in that environment, what was that like? For you as a child, I mean, did it feel forced upon you, or were you just all into it anyways because you just had a passion for it at an early age?
My dad is a coach, and I think my dad was lucky that he had a very competitive daughter. So I took to the racing aspect of canoe paddling, but for me it was also very social. So my friends from school, we all paddled together. So we would ride the bus after school, we would get dropped off here at the canoe club, we would hang out until it was time for practice. So it was convenient for my family logistically because they all worked and we were out of school at 2. So this really became the place where we would hang out. Canoe paddling just connected me to the ocean. It was a physical outlet. It was a cultural, what we call kind of like a pu'uhonua, if you will, a place where we would gain cultural knowledge. Canoe paddling also allowed me to travel around the world. My very first international trip at 14 was to the World Championships in Australia. So canoe paddling has allowed me to see the world and get to know so many other people. So it's always been a part of my life, and I've always been eager to participate in it, and now as an adult choosing to be a part of it, it's a very important part of my family.
How was your mother and father involved in canoe paddling, just in a general sense? You said they paddled themselves, but was it here at the Hawaiian Canoe Club, or what was their involvement in this tradition?
My dad was born and raised on Oahu, and he grew up paddling in Kailua as a teenager. And then after he graduated high school, he moved to California and actually joined and helped start numerous canoe clubs in Southern California. He worked for the Chart House restaurants.
Oh, sure.
And so that kept him in the beach cities of Southern California. And so when he was the bartender at the Long Beach Chart House, he met a very beautiful 18-year-old cocktail waitress from Long Beach, who was my mom, and got her started paddling in California. And then Chart House was expanding back to Hawaii, and they knew my dad was from Hawaii, so they asked him if he wanted to manage the Chart House restaurants here on Maui. And he wasn't from Maui, but his dad was born here, and he thought it was a great professional and personal opportunity. So he came to Maui and opened the Kahului Chart House, which became the hideaway. And so literally he was here, and my family had me here at Kahului. harbor. I mean, I wasn't born in the harbor, but he worked here. I mean, I practically was born and raised here. I've actually never gotten staff, and I think it's because I'm immune because I've been here my whole life. So my dad managed the restaurant, paddled in the canoe club. My dad has just had a history of investing, especially in kids, but he also coached women. He coached my mom. And so he's always been a big part of my canoe paddling experience.
Wow. So I've already kind of guessed that canoe paddling is much more than a sport for you. It's not just something to keep you fit and exercising. A lot of people think of it as a cool, interesting sport in Hawaii, but it's a lot more than that. It holds a lot more significance in the culture here. And the history of the Hawaiian people, like you said, how they got to the Hawaiian Islands in the first place. Could you talk a little bit about that and fill the listeners in on maybe why canoe paddling is such an important part of Hawaiian culture and history?
Well, like I said, there wouldn't be Native Hawaiians without the canoe, without the va'a. So Polynesians arrived here around 200 AD on a canoe. And then what we saw is once they got here, canoes were just the main part of transportation, both from island to island, but also from moku to moku within Maui. So you would take a canoe from Hana to Wailuku, for example.
So it wouldn't all just be a land-based hike from one place to another.
Exactly. It was much more efficient if you went that way. And the interesting thing about Hawaiian canoes specifically is that it's not ornamental. You won't see a lot of carving or decorative on the canoe, unlike in other even Polynesian places, because of the utility of it. When Captain Cook arrived in 1778, he specifically noted the huge number of canoes, like one canoe for every 3 or 4 people. It was just prolific. Unfortunately, it came at the cost of our Hawaiian forests, because Hawaiians realized that here in Hawaii we had wonderful hardy wood that they could use a single log to build a canoe. And so not only for transportation, Native Hawaiians used it for fishing, gathering other types of food, for travel, and for recreation. To a degree, there was always canoe racing, and because of the racing, it was then once missionaries came and stifled our whole culture, they convinced Ka'ahumanu that the betting and all of that was immoral, so canoe racing was banned until 1875, when Kalakaua brought it back as part of the Hawaiian Renaissance of that time.
So canoe racing was banned. Did
Yes.
I just hear that right?
Yes.
I had no idea that they actually banned canoe racing.
It was more the betting that was associated, with the canoe racing.
The morality part of it.
Yeah, and just the general stifling of our culture, because missionaries wanted Hawaiians to be Christian. So there's this pause, right? And so not everything was transmitted, whether that was the tradition of finding a log and the chance that it took to bring that log down and all of that. A story I did want to tell, here at Hawaiian Canoe Club, we name our canoes after significant people or Maui chiefs for our fiberglass canoes. Our koa canoes are named after swift winds of Maui. And I know in Hawaiian culture, there's a lot of words for rain, and we've kind of heard, like the Eskimos, there's a name for this type of rain or that type of rain. There are even more names for wind in Hawaiian culture. And we need to continuously say the names of those winds so they stay alive. So we have chosen our first canoe ever for Hawaiian Canoe Club was a koa canoe named Kokololio, which is the swift winds of Waikapu. Waikapu being the family home of our founder, John Lake, and his wife, Kealoha. And so Kokololio is older than Hawaiian Canoe Club. It came kind of from the Lake family and became our first canoe. In the late 1990s, Hawaiian Canoe Club realized that Kokololio alone was not sufficient for our competitive goals. So we set out on a multi-year effort to build a new koa canoe, a more modern shaped canoe. And it did take several years. Search parties from our canoe club went out weekly to private land in Kipahulu looking for a full-size koa log, because the rules require that a koa canoe be come from a single log, which is the traditional way. So one weekend, 5 members of our club, many of whom still paddle, were out hiking and located a log. After confirmation that it was sufficient, we were able to bring our club kahuna out along with 50 members of our own club and other clubs, and went through the ceremony of cutting the tree down and then bringing it, chanting all the way bringing it all the way down to the shore. Then it was transported by truck here to Kahului Harbor. The log then sat in the water for 40 days and 40 nights to cure. And then it was brought back into the hale where a gentleman named Fafa from Tahiti built our koa canoe. And what's significant is that we love Fafa for coming and living here and building and having our members be a part of that and watching this log become a canoe. You know, his mana and all of the mana of our members that were here is in that canoe. But to your point that it wasn't a continuous part of our culture because of the interruption and ban of the canoe paddling, we had to have a Tahitian come and do that for us, right? It wasn't a native Hawaiian who was building our koa canoe for us.
Was that just because of the lack of knowledge or understanding of the history because of that gap that happened?
It's because no native Hawaiian had been trained by his or her elders with how to do that. You know, there was that gap in knowledge. And so what I mean is we are still victim to that gap. And so what's important to me, what's important to Hawaiian Canoe Club is that we aren't just competitive racing. We are the place where indigenous knowledge of canoe paddling and canoe building is maintained through undertakings such as building a brand new koa canoe, but also in the daily practices of rigging our va'a, naming our va'a, the chants associated with our va'a, and all of that. Fafa was able to help us birth Pahili Q, which is our other koa canoe, and Pahili Q are the swift winds of Kipahulu, where the log came from.
Continuing the swift wind tradition of naming those koa canoes.
Well, you don't want to name a canoe slow wind, because then you go slow. So
good point.
There are slow winds, and there are names for slow winds. There's name for gentle winds. There's name for blustery winds. There's name for wind that bend plants. You know, there's a name for wind for everything. But in canoe paddling, we want to go fast.
Yeah, so you go swift.
We go swift winds. Yeah.
Just for people who might not understand the going up and finding this koa tree to build a canoe from, it's not just like you cut it down, you dragged it down to the ocean or down to the shoreline and brought it back here. There's a protocol following. You guys got to know what you're doing when you're doing this. It's not just as simple as cutting a tree down and carving it. Is that correct?
We had to be mentally, spiritually, and physically prepared for the undertaking of bringing a log down the mountain. And everyone went through that tradition or went through that ceremony. And for some, it was the very first time, and it might never happen again, right? We might not ever build another koa canoe here at Hawaiian Canoe Club. We may. There might not be any more logs that we can harvest. We also did an aggressive outplanting, to replace the log that we took.
Right.
And we had to be of right mind as we brought that log down, because our mana, our spiritual power, is now going into that log. Also, when I think about paddling our koa canoe and how that koa log was a living, breathing thing, it also was alive during the time that our ancestors were alive. So this tree connects us to our ancestors. It breathed the same air as our ancestors, and now we get to be in it. We get to touch it and feel it and add our own DNA and our own mana to it. And so that's very special. And you don't do that in other sports.
You can't separate canoe paddling from traditional Hawaiian culture. You can't do it.
Well, and Hawaiian culture is not just what happened before 1778.
Right.
Hawaiian culture is living and breathing today. And so while our ceremony to bring the canoe down used chainsaws and trucks and things like that, it is very much a part of our culture today, and that is just the evolution of it. And we have to be okay with the idea that things evolve. There's important traditions that we have to bring along with it, and then there's adaptations that we have to also include, because that's how you build a thriving lahui.
And what is that?
A lahui is like a nation or a group of people. It is people who are of Native Hawaiian blood, but I actually talked to a lot of people who witnessed the coming down of our koa canoe, and just their bearing witness to it and being a part of it, and then being able to tell that story even though they're not Native Hawaiian, is so important, because there's not going to be enough Native Hawaiians to tell their own stories. We need non-Hawaiians to help us tell our stories, to help us keep our traditions alive. It's important to do that and not take it and act upon it and capitalize on it for their own personal gain. But I think us as Hawaiians are getting very clear on what is ours to share, and what are the terms of how we do those things.
It's to me incredible because the opening of knowledge like that, the sharing of knowledge for people to continue it on is so important.
As canoe paddlers, we are lucky that our sport is connected to culture, so we have to be mindful and pay attention to the opportunities and the privileges that come with that. So I think you'll hear that a lot. And actually the word kuleana means responsibility, but it also means privilege. So we think about what responsibilities do we have in life, and what a privilege it is to have those responsibilities. And then what privileges do you have in your life? Every single privilege you have bears responsibility. So I would venture to say that those that were involved with that really felt the kuleana of doing the tradition and doing the practice and doing the protocol, but they also now feel the kuleana of telling that story, right? And this is what happened, and this is where we found it, and these were the people who were involved. And so every time that we paddle Pahili Q, we're telling that story. And that, I know for a lot of the people who are involved with that, is the kuleana that they bear and that they bring forth today.
Does the Hawaiian Canoe Club, besides these singular events of this one harvesting or the creation of this canoe, do they have any other ongoing programs that kind of perpetuate these kinds of traditions? The
best way that we do that is through our kids program. It's called the Hawaiian Kamali'i program. It was formalized in the 1990s with the establishment of our 501c3 Hawaiian Kamali'i Incorporated. We go and get grants every year to put on a tremendous summer program for about 150 kids ages 8 to 18.
Wow, that's a lot of kids.
It's a lot of kids, and it's very much rooted in Hawaiian culture. It takes different ways of showing culture, so it's a mix of a little bit of classroom, lots of hands-on. I think what really makes our program unique are our field trips. So the kids are doing on-island field trips weekly, and then they go on 3 off-island field trips. No planes involved. They paddle to Molokai, they paddle to Lanai, and they paddle to Kaho'olawe. All of these places require our kids to learn chants, to learn history, to learn culture, to learn politics about the 3 islands. The kids also on Kaho'olawe hike to Mo'aula Iki, which is the highest point, and they sit in the navigator's chair. In certain points during the year with clear weather, you can see 8 islands from that chair. And the channel there fronting the chair is Kealai Kahiki, which is the channel that takes us back to Tahiti. So it's a very important area that we go to every year. That is connected and preceded by an excursion that our kids take to Ulupalakua, to Pu'umahoi, which is a pu'u twins. There's two pu'us there, 2 mounds there, and a rain ahu, which is like a rain shrine. And we give ho'okupu, we give offerings at that rain shrine to then connect Ulupalakua to Kaho'olawe. In our ahupua'a system, Kaho'olawe is a part of Maui in the Honua Ula ahupua'a, and so it ran from Mauka to Makai and included Kaho'olawe.
So it extended beyond the shoreline,
yes,
all the way to Kaho'olawe.
Yes, and our kids every year give ho'okupu to further that connection, the ancient connection between that moku and our island to Kaho'olawe. And then we then go to Kaho'olawe and build further connection there through the navigator's chair and Mo'aula Iki.
So much more than a canoe paddling program.
So much more, yes.
What is the reaction? I mean, I know that you probably say ask the kids, but what is your sense of the reaction of all this? I mean, this is an immersive program. It seems like so much more than going out and getting exercise and learning how to paddle. Like, what do they take away from all of this?
Well, I think I always start with one of the strengths of our club is its inclusivity. So we purposely subsidize tuition, if you will, for the summer kids program. So that allows us to have kids from various demographic, socioeconomic, and geographical areas, also a multitude of ethnicities and schools. which is how it was for me growing up. As a parent, I see how the commercialization and the increase of prices for kids' sports programs keeps a lot of middle and low income kids out. We purposely keep ours very low, so every kid has the option or the opportunity to paddle with us. I have seen mothers drag their sons out of the parking lot, march them down to our canoe club and say, I am at my wit's end with my kid. I'm thinking specifically of one kid who had just set fire to an area near his neighborhood, was just having issues, and the mom didn't know what to do with him. And she said, can you help me? And we brought him in, and he paddled for us for 8 years. We gave him his first job. He was a youth leader for our summer program. So the kids go through the program, and around 14, they then age out of the program but become a youth leader. So we pay them a stipend for the whole summer. We give them a leadership training program. They have to learn how to interview and have like these soft business skills that they don't get elsewhere. But also they're leading sometimes their peers or kids they were in the program with, so they have to learn conflict resolution and proper role modeling, and they get to go on all of these excursions. They help to plan it. They shop for the food. They do the logistics. It's a lot of work. And on top of that, they're practicing for their races every week. And so by the end, this young man, he worked for us for 3 summers. He was Jewish. He was not part Hawaiian, but he could do all of the chants with us. He knew the geography of Kaho'olawe. He had been there so many times. And really, this place became his place. It became his clubhouse. It became where he went to belong. And I think so many kids look for a place where they can belong, a place that is safe, that there are adults who are watching out for them, who are keeping them accountable, who expect certain behavior out of them. That is, I think, the best benefit that we have for the community in general, is we really take these kids and they become a part of this family. I have had kids come who started at age 11 who were obese and overweight, and then have left, 50 pounds lighter with, this boy's like not wearing his shirt, and he's so proud because he had this great athletic experience. We've had girls who are constantly asked to step up to be leaders and to have a voice, and because they're doing the same workouts and the same types of things, have parity with their male counterparts. So I really see them feeling empowered to do all of the things that the boys do. So I think depending on the kid, they get what they put in. But I have seen this canoe club transform lives, and I've seen this canoe club become that place where kids can belong. That's positive.
And it sounds like it ranges, like you said, ethnicity, age, even boys, girls, they all have something that they can take out of this program. How many years has this been going on? Because I'm thinking 150 kids, maybe a summer times X amount of years. That's a lot of influence.
We've touched thousands of kids. In fact, our coach has been doing this for over 30 years, and he is now coaching the grandkids of kids that he first coached. And he's been that stalwart supporter, that person. Oh, you paddle for Coach Paul. I remember paddling for Coach Paul. He also expects a lot of them out of them athletically. Our kids have won the state kids title for over 25 years. This past year at the state canoe paddling championships, out of I think there's 15 events for kids. Our kids have medaled in every single event.
15 out of 15.
Which is, we've never done that before. The kids practice 5 days a week. They're in the water at least 3 to 4 days, and they do land training the other 2. No one works harder than them. I can say that with pretty strong confidence. These kids earn the success on the water. Also, when you think about, they've already paddled to Kaho'olawe, they've paddled to Molokai, and they've paddled to Lanai. Doing a 1/4-mile race,
that's nothing.
It's nothing when they've done 9 miles in the Au or Pailolo or Ka'i'ewaho Channel.
That's amazing to me, that it's like, as you're teaching them so much about Hawaiian culture, history, all of that, they're actually getting trained for the races, and
yes.
They probably don't even realize it.
Yes, well, we have to, we take all of them, right? We feed them knowledge, we feed them food, we feed them ike, we feed them responsibility, and then we ask of them to, to give themselves to the wa'a. by racing. I always say that the race is the nice part of our sport. There's so many hours, logistics, fundraising, we call it paddle-tics, not politics, behind everything to then have 6 people sitting at the canoe in a canoe at the race start, right? There's a whole story, but there's a place for everybody in the va'a. Literally everybody, every seat has a different job, and all types of people. I know it's because I was raised in it, but I just really believe that the va'a is what can bring people together. It's what can connect us if we're willing to learn how to paddle.
Sometimes nowadays, this talk of community good or working together as a community is almost in a negative connotation. Like we all need to just take care of ourselves and worry about our own individual needs. But part of the very foundation of canoe paddling in this whole sport is everyone is in the same canoe. Everyone has to work together as a crew, a team. And here in Hawaii, they expand that out to a community. Like we are all on one island, we're all in the same canoe. Although it's a little bit of a cliche how it gets thrown around so much, it's so true that if one person starts thinking about their own needs, then that really sinks the whole crew, doesn't it?
It does. It slows everybody down. There is a moment or there's this feeling that you chase as a canoe paddler where everybody is hitting and entering the water at the same time, pulling equally and exiting at the same time. We are always in pursuit of that feeling and that moment, and you might get it for just a few strokes here and there throughout a 1 mile race. Really good crews can find that and tap into it more consistently. But that's what we're always chasing. That's what we always want. And you cannot be in yourself when you do that. You have to be connected to everybody else in your canoe to get that feeling. There's also thought that if seat 4 wanted to go that way, they cannot. I mean, you literally could not win this race by yourself. That is just the fact of canoe paddling. It will take every single person doing their best, and they have personal kuleana to do that, personal responsibility and privilege to be in the canoe, to do that, to move this canoe forward. And if you are not a part of that, you're out.
You're gone.
No. I think Hokulea was a good example with the worldwide voyage, right? He va'a, he moku, he va'a. So the va'a is a metaphor for the world, the moku, my land, my area, right? And my area is my va'a. So it's my sphere of control. It's the people that I'm with. I mean, to think in paddling that I sit in seat 2 a lot. So I get to talk to seat 1. And one of the things I started saying to the paddlers is, girl, I got your back. I am literally right here behind you, right? I'm not in front of you. I am right behind you to support you. And whatever you're going to do, know that I will do it too. And there's a spiritual connection there. And so the people that we can connect to and that opportunity that we have to do that, and to go through really hard things, whether that's a practice or a channel crossing or a really gnarly set of waves, it's going to bond you. But you have to be willing to be vulnerable, let your guard down, and know that how we're going to be successful is being connected to each other. You know that it's such a metaphor for life, right? Some people are going to have a hard time. And they're not going to be on their game. They're going to be mentally or physically distracted. They are not going to be as strong. And you might need to step up. And you might need to stay calm. And you might need to tell yourself to have compassion and aloha for this person, even though they are slowing you down. And you need to bring them along. Because not everybody has a good day every day, right? But you bring them along anyway. It's kind of like society.
That's right.
We're all in this va'a together, and we're going to make it work.
Once again, mahalo to Kaimana Brummel for allowing us to be a part of her va'a during this fascinating Talk Story podcast. Visit HawaiianCanoeClub.org to learn more about how you can get involved in paddling. And if you like this episode and don't want to miss a single one coming up in the future, go to MauiOnline.com/podcast and subscribe via Apple Podcasts, via RSS, even email. And if you're here on Maui, be sure to check out the Maui Visitor Channel in your hotel room or on Residential Cable Channel 130. Mahalo for joining me, and aloha.